Hey, good morning, faithful listeners. This is Jen here with P40ministries.com. We are now in Matthew chapter 7, and this is the last chapter of the Sermon on the Mount. So let's start reading Matthew 7, verses 1 through 6 today. I will be reading out the WEB version of the Bible, but you, of course, can read whatever version you prefer. And grab your cup of coffee, and let's go ahead and just start. Don't judge so that you won't be judged. For with whatever judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with whatever measure you measure, it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but don't consider the beam that is in your own eye? Or how will you tell your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye, and behold, the beam is in your own eye? You hypocrite! First remove the beam out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck out of your brother's eye. Don't give that which is holy to the dogs, neither throw your pearls before the pigs, lest perhaps they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. So this is probably the most famous portion of all of Scripture because everyone quotes it to each other, but no one ever listens to it. Judge not, lest you won't be judged. That is the King James Version of this particular part of Scripture. So everybody likes to say, don't judge so that you won't be judged. But it's kind of funny here because if you look in verse 6, it says, don't give that which is holy to the dogs, neither throw your pearls before the pigs, lest perhaps they trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Is that not a form of judgment? You know, when Jesus says, judge not so that you won't be judged, I think that he is saying, you better be careful when you judge. Just don't judge if you are doing the exact same thing as these people. For example, I've talked about my road rage in the past. I do have road rage. And, you know, if I'm judging somebody else for getting road rage who is in front of me, and yet I also have road rage, I should not be judging that person because it says here, whatever judgment you judge that person with, you are going to be judged by. So if I call that person, oh, you idiot, for cutting me off in traffic and him having road rage against me, when I get to heaven, God is going to recall that and be like, yeah, you called this guy an idiot for driving that way, but you have done that yourself. You get road rage. And I think that is what this means. And the same thing with whatever measure you measure, it will be measured to you. So if you just see somebody in, a random stranger and you judge them for their appearance or something like that, that is a measurement you are using to judge that person. It says, whatever measure you measure, it will be measured to you back. So this verse is not something that you're supposed to be quoting at people. Don't judge me. It says in the Bible, judge not, lest you be judged. But this is something that we are supposed to be doing ourselves. We should not be judging so that God does not judge us. We can have a righteous judgment. There are other verses in the Bible that say, I judged that person and found them to be unrighteous. I think Paul says that somewhere. So if judging is a sin, why would Paul say that in Scripture and tell it to us? He wouldn't. Righteous judgment is not a bad thing. We are supposed to judge for ourselves what is right and what is wrong. If somebody's doing something wrong and they're like, hey, come do this with me, we are supposed to judge that situation and be like, nah, that's wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. That is what this verse means. This is all about the heart. Where is our heart when we are judging somebody? Our heart has to be in the right place. It has to be a righteous judgment. And then the verse 3 is the exact same thing. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but don't consider the beam that is in your own eye? And this is the classic famous words of Jesus talking about the speck and the beam. And what he's saying here is, there's like one little spot that's wrong with your brother, but you have this huge beam that's coming out of your head. And, you see the tiny little speck, but you can't even remove the huge issue that you have. And this is all about the heart. If I see somebody doing something wrong, but I have that exact same sin area and I do it all the time, I have absolutely no right to judge that person. But we can judge them after we remove the beam from our own eyes. So if I decided to say I had an issue with, I'm just going to say a very simplistic sin here. Say I had an issue with like kleptomania and I enjoyed stealing all the time. But I saw one person, a friend of mine, steal a pen. Say I saw my friend steal a pen. And I was like, oh, you shouldn't be stealing that. You better give that back. But I have an issue with taking stuff from stores and from people's houses. That would be a beam that is in my own eye, and I'm trying to remove a speck out of my brother's eye. And it says once you remove that beam, so you get rid of that sin and you no longer have it and you don't do it and you turn from that. So I decide I'm not going to steal anything anymore. And then I see a friend of mine steal a pen off of a person's desk. I could be like, hey, I can give you a pen. You should probably return that person's pen. You can do that. And that is a form of judgment. But we should be judging ourselves. This is all about judging ourselves, not other people, but making sure that our hearts are in the right place. We have to judge ourselves. And we can have righteous judgment, and we need to help people. It's very, very scriptural to tell people what they are doing wrong. It's very scriptural to point people in the right direction. That is what the gospel is. The gospel is pointing people in the right direction. And then in verse 6, I kind of covered this already, but it says, don't give that which is holy to the dogs, and neither throw your pearls before the pigs, lest they perhaps trample them under their feet and then turn and tear you to pieces. So judge who you hang out with. Judge those people. Make sure that you are not in that kind of situation for yourself. Pigs can be extremely aggressive creatures, and you're not going to give a strand of pearls to them because they won't care about them. They'll just trample them and then come after you if you get anywhere near them, especially wild boars. They're extremely aggressive animals. And this is what Jesus is saying here. Be careful who you are surrounding yourself with. Judge that situation for yourself. Judge yourself first. Make sure your heart is in the right place, but make sure you are not in a sinful situation, really. So this was Matthew chapter 7, the first portion of it, and I think this is the most twisted section of all of Scripture. I personally think that this is so twisted. We love to preach this verse at other people, but not actually follow it. This is all about judging ourselves, following it for ourselves. We should not be quoting this verse at anybody, but rather listening to it for our own good and own benefit so that we can make our hearts right with God. So friends, join me tomorrow at 6 a.m. I will be back in Genesis chapter, let's see here, I think we're in 17 now. Yeah, Genesis chapter 17. We will be talking about Abram, and we're finally going to learn about Abram's name change and Sarai's name change as well. So join me then, 6 a.m. And I'm going to ask you guys, if you want to support P40 Ministries and everything we do, go to www.p40ministries.shop and you can pick up your P40 Ministries t-shirt today. Take a look at all the designs I have in the store and wear that P40 Ministry logo proudly. But thank you guys so much for listening and tuning in every single morning. And as I say at the end of every podcast episode, happy listening and God bless faithful listeners. Bye, everybody.